be an advantage to the United Health Group to have it be called the United Health Group Pulmonary Fibrosis Patient Registry, because if we had a cure for that, they would spend less money treating pulmonary fibrosis patients. So we're doing that. Now, to go back to the 4%. Of those 1,700 bills that have passed, 4% is the highest rank you can get. It can go lower. Those 1,700 bills were all assigned the 4% number. So I guess I left out an essential detail. I apologize for that. Having a 4% ranking is a good thing, not a bad thing. There's also something else. You all know what an earmark is, I assume. Yes. Earmarks are bad. Earmark is when you want to build a bridge to nowhere in Alaska. There is something else that most people who are not political junkies are not aware of. It's called a programmatic request. Anybody heard that term before?
For program funds.
Congress appropriates money to keep government running every year. So the Labor Age Appropriations Bill is now under consideration in the United States Congress. Labor, Health, and Human Services is why we call it Labor Age. If Congress happened to adjourn next December without passing an appropriations bill, the government shuts down. We've all seen that stuff in the press. They're going to pass a bill. They may not pass the Pulmonary Fibrosis Research Enhancement Act, but they are going to pass an appropriations bill to keep Labor, Health, and Human Services funded and running as an agency of government. So, dual-track lobbying activity. Of course, we're pushing the bill because that's our most public and visible way of getting what we want. Much more quietly and then sort of backdoor, we have drafted language for the Senate Appropriations Committee and the House Appropriations Committee to slide in as a footnote the Labor Age bill, which says, here's the money to keep yourself running for another 12 months or 24 months. We don't know how long that funding will be. It doesn't say we're appropriating a certain amount of money to be used for the purposes of this patient registry for pulmonary fibrosis, but it says we expect you, when you come back in 2 years and ask us for another appropriation, that you will have delivered a patient registry for pulmonary fibrosis as part of this continuing resolution that keeps you funded for another 12 or 24 months. So the House bill and the Senate bill is the primary objective. Being realists and understanding enough about politics to know that you don't always get what you want, even if you have a good argument. We're doing the backdoor approach of a programmatic request. That also might not succeed, but it might. Lightning does strike. So publicly we talk only about the bill. Privately we talk about the programmatic request to the people who have the power to make that happen. Congressman Denny Reberg from Montana is one of them. Senator Tom Harkin from Iowa is the other. Those are the two key guys. If they say yes to the programmatic request, it'll probably wind up in the bill. Just those two guys out of 535 members of Congress. If they say no, it won't. So I don't call Congressman Reberg from Montana to bug him. I'm from Minneapolis. I'm not in his district. I got people in Montana calling him, pulmonary fibrosis patients, who say, hey, I'm from Billings. Vote for this. This Congressman Reberg also happens to be running for the United States Senate in this election cycle, so he wants to move up a notch. So he's paying more attention to his constituents because he's asking them to vote for him in a statewide vote in November. Yep.
What was it that you said about Eric Cantor keeping health bills back? Can you explain that again? What was that?
Well, if you read the newspapers or the magazines or watch a lot of television, there's a lot of talk today about the Affordable Care Act. Most people call it Obamacare.
My boss met with Eric Cantor about that. That's why I'm wondering what you're
doing. Right. Well, the Republicans said 2 years ago, when this new Congress came in, 112 Congress sat down, they declared that their #1 legislative agenda for the 112th Congress was the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Now, I'm not taking a position, personally I'm in favor of it, but, you know, as an advocate for this organization, I don't take political stance, Republican or Democrat. But Mr. Cantor and Mitch McConnell in the Senate took the position that if a health care related bill succeeded in the 112th Congress, it would be deemed politically to be a victory for the president. Therefore, not good for Republicans. Therefore, the easiest way to shut that down was to tell the members of the Republican conference, it's called, just all the Republicans who serve in the House and the Senate, that they're not going to let any health care related bills pass in this session, regardless of merit, because their primary objective is repealing the ACA and defeating President Obama. And that's a political decision. Now, as I said, Eric Cantor's a very, very smart guy. And I believe, personally, I believe he wants to be president. But, as I said earlier, his intellect is being trumped by his politics. This is a very simple bill. It does a very simple thing to advance the ball in finding a cure for pulmonary fibrosis. It will create jobs, it will cut the federal deficit, it will save lives. There is no reason for any Republican or any Democrat to be opposed to this legislation. I did talk to one congressman from Houston, Texas, who said, show me in the Constitution where it says we build patient registries. Can't, Congressman. Health, welfare, and protection of the population is the closest I can come. You know, if somebody's opposed to new federal spending of any kind, and that's basically the Tea Party position, pull in the reins. You know, we are never going to turn them around. We're never going to get 100% of members of Congress to vote for this legislation. But we don't need 100%. We need 218 in the House and 60 in the Senate. We're 25% of the way there in the Senate. We're 33% of the way there at the House. So it's definitely doable.
Can you rattle off 3 or 4 national registries right now that were created like that, in the manner that you want?
Come up here afterwards and I'll give you this. Yeah, they're in here. I can't spit them off real
That's
fast.
okay.
But I've got them here. Yes, ma'am.
Having a registry, will that be a detriment to us in some way?
I can't hear you. Sorry. Yeah, the microphone out.
Okay. I was just wondering, having a registry, will that affect us in any way? Be detriment to us as far as insurance won't cover us?
No.
Because we're on this registry?
Because the registry is, all patient registries, at least all the ones I've ever seen, and there are many hundreds of them, are anonymous. They aren't tied to you. I mean, they'll look at me as a 61-year-old Scandinavian heritage man who lives in the Midwest. So yes, you're typecast by gender, age, environmental conditions. The highest pulmonary fibrosis mortality rate in the United States is, anybody know? I should give out prizes.
New York.
I think New York. New York is wrong. New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Who's 50? 51st if you count the District of Columbia.
Hawaii.
New Jersey.
Really?
Now, counterintuitive. But, you know, those are the reasons that, you know, what is it about New Mexico, or what is it about New Jersey, or maybe in my case, personally, what is it about, I'm a lifelong resident of Minnesota. Is there something environmental? Don't know.
How about the statistics are just wrong?
Possible, because there isn't a
How many people moved from New Jersey to New Mexico?
smart one.
The population of the two.
Yeah. And there's so many things we don't know. And that's the very frustrating thing about being a lung patient in America. Now that, you know, pulmonary fibrosis advocates, I'm not here to ask for money, we don't raise money. We are a nonprofit, we do exist at donations, but we're going to spend $6,000 or $7,000 a year this year. I mean, really, that's our budget for advocacy. The American Lung Association spent $700,000 in the third quarter of 2011. Not a nickel of it for pulmonary fibrosis advocacy.
Have you ever been there?
I'm sorry,
Have you ever been in Washington DC
to the ALA's offices? Sure.
did you like what you hear over there?
Well, they wrote a very nice letter endorsing this legislation. The American Thoracic Society did, the American Society for Respiratory Care. This bill has been introduced, or when it was introduced, was endorsed by all the right organizations. But none of them are allocating any advocacy money to lobby for its passage. So, I mean, charity begins at home. Number one, you support the Grief Matters Support Group in Richmond, Virginia, because this is your home. These are your friends, and this is where you're going to make a difference. Number two, you support the Pulmonary Fibrosis Advocates or the Coalition for Pulmonary Fibrosis, or the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation, because they are laser focused on your disease. I'm not opposed to raising money for the American Lung Association. I did a walk last Saturday in St. Paul, Minnesota, walked 3 miles, carrying the oxygen tank, to raise money for the ALA chapter in St. Paul. But that said, they are helping me. I expect you guys to help me. And I really believe we can get it done.
Something that Paul said to me yesterday rang to my heart. You might say, well, I have COPD, so this really doesn't matter to me. But our little Breath Matters is a family, and we're here to help each other. And if you have COPD, we're going to be right there behind you to support legislation for you. And so if you don't have pulmonary fibrosis and you do want to help us, then please work with Paul.